Welcome back to the news. So, we've got a freshly released content patch and all the ups and downs that come with that, a game-changing event this week in Mop Remix, and the final zone update of Alpha, as well as Blizzard's parent company jumping onto their own grenade. There's a hell of a lot to get into. The first thing we're going to do, though, is Darkheart, and a big thanks to our members over at Bellular.games for making all this possible. Over there, they get access to our content early and ad-free, the Lore Walking podcast, and a bunch of other stuff, so you can check that out at the link below. And with that said, the Darkheart patch. Darkheart then, it's our last content update before the pre-patch, and I think it's pretty good. The actual main quest line was definitely the shorter side, but it was jammed full of things to read, lots of teases for what's to come. I think the performances were great. Locust Walker is a real fun character. I just like how sort of intimidating he feels, and the Void Ante is being turned way up. Now, if you want more of a proper lore breakdown, like I did a full video of that a few days ago. Now, some other parts were a little bit more broken. There was an issue where the group finder was fixed by, no kidding, turning the mature language filter on, and just a bunch of miscellaneous bugs, but the good news is those are mostly all sorted now. Warlocks, though, really took the cake, so they were discovered to have been broken, then they weren't, and then they were actually accidentally fixed. Weird. So the Inferno talent was supposed to generate a lot fewer soul shards, but it's actually been broken, and it's been way stronger than intended since Shadowlands Season 4. Weird. So they fixed that, but then they realized that they kind of needed to revert the fix because, well, all of the tuning, the gameplay, it was all built upon the bug. So in fixing the bug, they were inadvertently kind of being the fun police. Certainly one of the weirder bugs we've had. Anyway, the next thing was bullions. So basically, the patch kind of broke them. If you looted the 2 bullion from the weekly dungeon quest, which by the way is huge, that's just straight up a free bit of gear that's really, really good. But if you looted that from the dungeon quest, then you wouldn't be able to loot your usual one. The good news is that's now fixed. And speaking of fixes, soloing BFA Mythic raids. A lot of minor changes to old BFA raids have came in, and they make it way easier to solo them. That combined with Season 4 gear being strong just means, like, yeah, you can go mad. You can farm out those transmogs, and there was initially a problem with Mythic N'Zoth and Mythic Cahoon, but the good news is those have been hotfixed, so basically, have at it. Next then, we've got Mob Remix. The global release is Thursday, 10 AM PDT, which is about half an hour before my guild's regularly scheduled raid time, so I don't think any of us will be attending. If you want a reminder on how the gameplay will be going down, you can check out the video we made about that a little while ago. Otherwise, there's really no way to prepare for it. I mean, you could perhaps make a blank character to reserve your name. That's pretty much it. Of course, though, you'll need to delete that and then remake the character when this launches, because unfortunately this is only doable on a new character. I do understand that technically, but yeah, it's probably the one big point of criticism that could be leveled at it. Anyway, once you've done all that, one thing I would recommend is installing the Narcissus add-on, because Peter has been working on an amazing UI for getting all of your Mop Remix gems in order, so that should be really, really nice for when you're actually playing it. The next thing then is some Darkheart content, because 1027 also brought in very long-awaited Heritage Armor quests. And the good news is they're actually really good, especially the Draenei one. It is absolutely excellent. It is definitely worth your time. The Orc Heritage quest, though, that kind of blew people's expectations out of the water, and this one has absolutely done that again. It is clearly a massive labor of love. There is tons of real well-written dialogue, lots of optional stuff if you want to just delve into more details. It's basically everything you could hope for a Draenei Heritage Armor quest. It's great. And it also doesn't get bogged down in just pure emotion and dialogue, though. There's plenty of action, it's well-paced, there's a good little bit of background drama going on as well. Of course, no spoilers for today's video, but it's interesting stuff. Some of it, I think, could be kind of big, and we'll cover it in the future. As for the trolls, it is shorter, which is not as ideal, but I am actually hearing pretty good things. And that means that an overall, narrative perspective, well, the Darkheart patch has basically been one big win. Which, for real, we've had a mixed time with the narrative over the last few years. It's nice to see something that's just really damn good, and thankfully, that's continuing into the new expansion. The War Within has received its 4th alpha build. It's got cool stuff. The new Shaman Stormbringer tree is a lot of fun, it's just lightning everywhere, but Warlocks continue to be upset. The class rework honestly just feels like less mobility and less fun, and the TLDR is that Dreadstalkers no longer guarantee cores for Demo, and Destro is losing their Blasphemy Infernal summon, which honestly kinda sucks. The feedback is essentially all negative about that, so I mean, at least they got their new tier set appearance update, which is nice. People are raving about that, but yeah, I think they need to reconsider some of what they're doing with the Warlock class. Like, I can totally understand from a design perspective why they want some of those limitations, but ultimately, it just feels less fun. Now, the other specs getting their changes were Rogues, Brewmasters, and Unholy DKs, while Fire Mage got some nice targeted tweaks. So Rogues are mostly getting cleaned up, with things like Serrated Bone Spike becoming a passive that's applied by Rupture, Sepsis being removed, Shadow Dance now only being available to Subtlety, and some other things like that. Some obvious improvements, some things that will feel a bit like a nerf, you know the drill. Now, the good news is that their hero talents are due some fixes and improvements based on feedback, things like the Trickster moving away from using Feint, so that's definitely a positive. Brewmasters then get what looks to be some nice updates to just smooth out their damage intake with more Stagger and Purify, as well as Healing Elixir and Bone Dust Brew being replaced. Unholy DK then gets a whole bunch of stuff actually. Army is now a 3-minute cooldown instead of being 8 minutes but relying on a cooldown reduction. Gargoyle is getting a passive choice talent to offer a smoother damage profile for dungeons if you want that, while most of their other CDs like Apocalypse and Dark Transformation are being standardized at 45 seconds. And one last thing in classes, Rat's new talent to proc Wings whenever they use Wake of Ashes just feels amazing to play, so that's really cool. And a little small thing, monks are getting Glyph of Jab so they can actually Tiger Palm with their weapons again. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay, zones then, the overall situation with Alpha. So here's the deal. Azj-Kahet is in, and that basically means that our 4 big zones are there. There's quite a lot to talk about. I don't want to go too much into, or really into any spoiler details here. That's not really what the news is for, but I will talk about just overall, like, the vibes, how things are feeling. So, the zones overall are really, really good, I would say. One thing I certainly notice is just scale, size. Like, these zones are absolutely goddamn humongous. So, yes, it's only 4 zones, and that is fewer zones than, say, what we got in Wrath of the Lich King, but my god, they are humongous. And that does mean that just the level of scope, the sort of sense of adventure and fantasy, it is just pushed really, really far in this expansion. And that's not me just saying, oh, it's really big, wow, size. No, it is the fantasy, right? Like the design of the zones is great. The level of fantasy is just being pushed forward and forward and forward. Taking a look at somewhere like, say, Azj-Kahet is real impressive. Azj-Kahet, honestly, it does feel like a Suramar. Now, there are some very obvious, I'd say almost callbacks to Suramar. I mean, there's a very overt one with the guards basically, you know, doing some barks that are callbacks. But with Azj-Kahet, basically, you have the overall zone, which is massive, and then there's the city itself, which is also massive, and certainly it would remind you of Suramar. There are friendly Nerubians there, mixed, neutral Nerubians, angry Nerubians, because instead of just all being a bunch of bad guys, the Nerubians are basically a full-blown civilization. So that stuff is real impressive. The dungeons are continuing to be quite strong, I would say. Certainly, well, I think is it City of Threads? It's definitely feeling a little bit long, but overall, like, the very positive trend is still continuing there. So, as compared to, say, Dragonflight, well, Dragonflight was very much giving you things we'd seen before, right? Certainly done, you know, done to an impressive level, yes, but fundamentally, some things we'd seen before, like, say, Azure Span being kind of like a pan-Northrend. I think the most unique thing that Dragonflight probably did was the Waking Shores zone, which I really did like. Here, though, I think the Isle of Dorn is definitely the most traditional one. Hallowfall does really blow you away with Spectacle. The Ringing Deeps doesn't really blow you away as much, but I think just the deep integration of the earthen technology, I think that just looks really cool. And again, it feels massive. You know, it feels massive in the way of that sense of scale from the start of, say, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, right? When, you know, Gandalf the Balrog are falling down, you know, below Khazad-dûm, and they, you know, just kind of goes to the big cave. And the sense of scale is just absolutely, you know, it's impressive. It feels real high fantasy. That is happening here. So I think that's just good. I suppose there's just a wow factor to it all. The other thing then is story. So definitely we're looking at shorter campaigns compared to like some of the, the long past of the game. That being said, well, me and Matt were talking about it on stream, and ultimately the conclusion we came to is this is better than anything that we've seen, we think, since Warlords of Draenor. Now, I don't think that WoD can be topped for just like a linear campaign perspective. It was really strong. Here, it does definitely feel like it's 4 separate zones, but they are tied together better than really any of the recent previous expansions. A lot of the format is basically you and the sort of gang of big name heroes kind of going on a big quest together. It works quite well. The side quests are also quite good. So really, it does look like you're just going to have a pretty good adventure. It's absolutely, I'd say, a step up over Dragonflight. It's obviously better than Shadowlands. I would definitely say at this stage is better than BFA, and honestly better than Legion, because Legion was just, hey, go get the Pillars of Creation. That's what you did, right? Just getting some MacGuffins. Here, it definitely feels much better. So we're at the end of the alpha now. Beta will presumably happen maybe this week. It could be next week or the week after, but the zones are there, and that basically means it's time for endgame testing. So, big picture, I'm feeling real good about War Within. Then the final story of today probably doesn't matter to WoW at all, but it does involve Blizzard's new corporate owners, and that's why I think you should know about it. Xbox has been under serious fire very recently for closing 4 of Bethesda Studios. The most notable 2 are Tango Gameworks, a Japanese studio recently made famous for the incredible Hi-Fi Rush, and Arcane Austin, known for Prey, which is fantastic, and Redfall, which was less fantastic. Long story short, Xbox have a lot of expenses, and they are basically just cutting costs. If something, doesn't have like a big safe project, they're just cutting those things. So yeah, they've basically cut a bunch of Bethesda studios that were in the pitching stages rather than being in the middle of development. And that just sucks, especially with Hi-Fi Rush, because it's like, hey, you made a brilliant game that, according to Xbox, performed fantastically, and your reward is being shut down. That definitely is rough, and I think it won't have a notable impact on something like Blizzard or World of Warcraft, because WoW is very much a safe bet product, but it will be bad for morale and trust across the group, and that is relevant to us. If you want more info, check out our news channel. But anyway, that is it for me. That's it for the news. Now you're caught up to date. If you want to go and check out something great, take a look at this video on the upcoming dungeons, because man, some of them go pretty hard, and yeah, it's kind of exciting. So I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.